Women face other challenges than men when trying to reintegrate in the home country. So, how can female returnees be supported? That is our topic today in the fourth Talk2Connect podcast, aiming to bring caseworkers within voluntary return and reintegration closer together. We want you to share experience and insights, whether you work for a state agency or an NGO, whether you work in Europe or in countries of origin. My name is Lisa Tallroth and I'm your host. Today, apart from this podcast, Talk2Connect also includes webcasts and webinar sessions. All episodes still available online on YouTube or the website reintegrationfacility.eu. So myself and the Talk2Connect team, we are located at the Swedish Migration Agency in Stockholm. But my guests today are in different countries. Start by saying welcome to Presca Wanki, researcher with deep experience from the reintegration process. You are affiliated with United Nations University and right now in Belgium, in Brussels, right? Welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll be talking about the challenges faced by women returnees in Cameroon. So we know that, there are some cross-cutting challenges faced by both men and women, but I'll try to be specific.
I will just before we go into that, so I will also welcome my other guest, Stella NDIAYE, who's a program manager at IOM, International Organization for Migration. And welcome to the podcast, Stella.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me.
You are currently located in Gambia when we speak now, where you have an office.
Yes, exactly. I'm currently working for IM in the Gambia.
Mm. And so you both, you do have a lot of knowledge in this area of reintegration. IOM is, of course, working ground level with these matters, but I know that you, Presca, also has quite a bit of experience from that out of Cameroon. And why don't we start just there, the gender-specific challenges facing women and female migrants then when they return to their home country. So, Presca, when looking at this in Cameroon, what did you find? What are the gender-specific challenges facing women?
Okay, thank you. What I discovered was women mostly didn't have the knowledge or the skills when creating businesses. For example, those returning through the assisted return programs, they're often in a hurry to begin a business. And they have no knowledge about the market or the market situation in Cameroon or the type of business venture to actually engage in. And sometimes they would ask their family members. And these family members will actually give advice based on their preferences and not that of the returnees. So when this project is eventually set up, the family members are the one running this business and not the returnees. And when there's a disagreement between the family members, then there's a halt to the business. It leads to business failure. I also discovered that even those who succeeded to set up these micro businesses, sometimes they lacked the storage facilities for their goods. That is, after market hours, they don't know where to store these goods that they sell in the market. They had to transport it to and fro from their houses to the market, and they complained that it was actually too cumbersome for them to do that.
And is this, you'd say, something that differs the returning men and women?
I found this mostly with the women. Yes, I found this most. I worked, if I should, I think it would be important to highlight that I worked with different types of returnees, those who were assisted, those who were forcefully returned, and those who returned independently. So these groups of people had different experiences to some extent. So focusing just on women who were assisted, these were the challenges that I noted at the first. Yeah.
And when it comes to attitudes facing women upon return, what have you seen in that area?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting. In the case of Cameroon, it will be important for me. I think in most African countries, migration is not an individual project, it's a family project. And in Cameroon, to be specific, a successful returnee is judged based on the resources that they come back with. So in a case where a woman migrates and return empty-handed and she is not married, she faces stigmatization or is shunned by the community or her family members. So in essence, women face two main challenges. First of all, they have to fulfill the purpose of the migration project, and they also have to fulfill the gender norms or cultural norms by getting married and bearing children. And in other cases, I had women who were also divorced, so they were shunned by their own communities. So this creates a lot of mental health issues for women, and it also impacts their reintegration processes because they are often isolated from their community members and some of their friends as well. And most of them think of re-migrating again so as to make things right.
Okay, so there are, of course, different aspects to reintegration. You mentioned a few, from the economical aspects to the social and psychosocial. Marie Stella, I know that from IOM, this is very much how you evaluate reintegration out of these three different aspects. And so when it comes to gender-specific challenges, women in this case we're talking about, what do you recognize this, that we heard Presca deciding? Can you even broaden the picture?
And I think for both men and women, it's challenging because we know also the context in our countries in terms of labor market. But for women on this specific dimension, what we really need to understand is the gender norms in terms of labor division. Because usually there will be a choice in terms of masculine or feminine type of business or employment you can have. So this is one of the main challenges women will face at economic level. And then you have the social dimension. Within that social dimension, you will include everything related to the accommodation and the shelter, which is quite a big challenge for women because sometimes when they come back, they don't want to go back in their family. And you need to make sure that based on the trauma they experience during the migration journey, they are able to benefit from some kind of support in terms of accommodation. And it's more important when they come back with children, while when they were leaving, actually, there were no children, which is related to the third dimension, which is the psychological one, where you have, of course, the stigma, the discrimination, and also the acceptance once they are back in their country. And that one is related to everything that might be gender-based violence during the journey, and where you need to make sure that you have psychosocial support available in our countries, which is not for now well developed as a concept. And for a woman, it's even more challenging because there are the shame to talk about what they face as experience, and for the children that usually we don't think about in terms of like language, in terms of engaging with their community and their family. So I will summarize it like to capture the three dimension: economic, psychosocial, and the social one.
And I know that IOM, you have a integrated gender sensitive approach in all your programs. And what does that mean? I mean, how could these needs be met then? Can you give some examples?
So one concrete example will be the shelter, for example, offer. When we are so sure that if a woman is coming back in the community where they won't feel comfortable reintegrated, we just make sure that we have a shelter available. So we provide the accommodation for them and also the children. When we're talking, for example, about the economic reintegration, you can consider two main things. How we can raise awareness in terms of labor markets, what could be done to make sure that we are not only selecting one reintegration activity because she's the woman, but because she has the capacity to do so, and how we can build around with different service providers to make sure that, for example, for the trainings, you put it in a way that it won't affect the, let's say, role. If someone is having kids and you want her to be sitting somewhere from 8 to 6, how do you manage the expectation in terms of childcare, for example? How do you anticipate in terms of, if she's married, how do you anticipate the reaction of her husband, just to make sure that you include the family and the community in the process? So this is maybe a few examples I can give on how we can be more gender sensitive in terms of approach.
Yeah, Presca, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and looking into the. I mean, you did you dove into the situation of Cameroon women trying to reintegrate, and what would they have needed, and what did they get as support?
Okay, I'll focus on what they should need. And I think it will also be important for me to highlight that I focus on people or migrants returning from Western countries like Europe, like European countries. I didn't focus on those returning from African countries. So what I found very interesting is the need to strengthen referral networks, mechanisms, and also counseling services due to the challenges that women may face, especially those having mental health issues, those who lack training. How can they access training services? If there are local partners or local referral partners, it will be easier for them to refer them to these partners that, oh, we've discovered that this woman, for example, doesn't know how to invest the money she receives from her micro business, doesn't know how to save, need more skills. So these referral mechanisms will be very helpful for women to be financially viable, and this would facilitate their reintegration processes, especially economically.
And do you think this is something that needs to be set up already on the pre-departure side? I mean, even when the counseling starts in Europe, that was your idea, right?
The counseling, normally there's pre-departure counseling, and upon arrival, there's still another counseling.
Yeah.
So during this counseling at arrival, the needs of the returnees should be identified, such as those having mental health issues, those who need temporary accommodation because they can't go back to their communities or their families, and those, and while in the origin countries, those needing more skill set to set up businesses, to invest. In fact, all of the entrepreneurial skills there should be referral mechanisms where it will be easy to refer these women to.
But what I hear you say is that support should be tailored, basically. And I think that is often said to be the ambition, to tailor the support to each and every individual. But to your experience, I'm turning to both of you, are there aspects typically being overlooked, gender aspects being overlooked, given that, I mean, there are fewer women than men who migrates? The typical returnee would be a man, right? So the counselors are more trained on counseling men. So are there gender aspects, examples that you can give us that are typically overlooked in this, even though the ambition is to tailor the support?
Yes, I think that if the counselor is a man, normally the woman won't open up to whatever trauma she is going through. If she's facing abuse at home, for example, if the counselor is a man, they won't be able to feel comfortable because it's a cultural thing to open up about certain issues like that to a man. But had it been it's a woman, to ensure this would be a recommendation for the counselors, there should be a woman involved in these counseling sessions so that women will be able to open up about everything to the counselor so that their needs can be met. Yeah.
Stella, to your experience, is that a crucial part?
I think, yes, for me, we need to look at on both sides before the departure and once they arrive. Before the departure, as Presca was mentioning, you need to make sure that you understand the cultural barrier that might impact the counseling process. Not only by having a female, but also knowing in which context the woman will go back.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and which is why I think it's really important that the counseling is the linkage between the pre-departure counseling and the counseling once they are back to their country need to be strengthened, in the sense that someone will be counseling the woman in Europe, for example, if we just take this case, maybe having the bias of the policy framework in Europe and expecting that the woman will easily fit into it once back in their country of origin. On the other side, we are very well aware that right now, many of the African countries, I don't want to generalize, but we are not there yet in terms of gender inclusivity at policy level. So we need to make sure that also we don't counsel one woman based on the context in Europe, why she will be going back to an African country where the setting is completely different. Because it might impact her in terms of economic opportunities that are available, in terms of even community engagement. The second aspect that is sometimes overlooked is also how we, the same as Presca was mentioning, that sometimes the migration is a family decision and not an individual one. I think the reintegration should be the same. In a sense, when you do the counseling, you don't only take into account that woman, but also the family. How we can bring at that stage of counseling the family or the community that can easily help with the process of reintegration. And just one last thing, to make sure that we also look at the vulnerabilities, not when doing the counseling in Europe, but what will be the vulnerability in the country of, because you are not vulnerable because you are a woman or a man, you are in the vulnerable situation. So someone in Europe can be can face like specific challenges that might be more important once they are back to their country. So I would say this is the three aspects we need to, how to linkage both counseling at country of departure and country of origin, how you include the family and the communities in the reintegration process, and how you understand the policy and the cultural context in the country of origin to better consult the person.
And Presca, I'm curious to hear more about your research in Cameroon. So the support that was provided during that time you were there, and for the women that you met, how was that? I mean, where did it succeed? Where did it fail?
I think, yeah, I've mentioned it before. I don't think I mentioned it anyway. I think some women had health issues, for example, recurring health issues, even when they were still in the destination countries, had to use some of the support that was provided for their medical bills. And that was really problematic because they were in this precarious situation. And what I found interesting about the partner implementing the reintegration project was, due to the vulnerability faced by women, another project was created meant just for women. But then it was a group project for women. But then there was still a problem because most of the women didn't still have the skill set to be able to sell the products that they wanted to engage, to market the products in to the population. For example, they decided that they wanted to engage in agriculture. They went and they purchased all of their products that they had to engage in this venture. They came back, went to the market, but they discovered that most people weren't buying their products because they didn't actually prepare it the way it had to be prepared. So they only realized it after someone in the market told them that this is not how it's being sold, you have to prepare it in this way before people can consume it. So this skill set is a major problem for women. Yeah, I saw it in the individual projects and the group projects. So
the sport didn't really go the whole way through. It was only like halfway only halfway successful.
yes, it's just halfway successful, especially when they have health issues.
Yeah.
They use it, yeah.
If I may, that's maybe why the referral is important, because we are all, usually the reintegration is provided on project base.
Yes.
And you already have a kind of, let's say, unit cost you need to spend to cover the whole reintegration, whether it is on the health issue, the economic, or the psychosocial. So the best approach will be to see how you can maximize what is available for the returnee. For example, if someone needs to have the to start the business, to cover, for example, for the health issue, to have access to psychosocial, how you can find different service provider that can cover different type of costs, and then the one dedicated within the project can be used specifically, for example, on the reintegration or the accommodation, and then other service provider can complete actually. So the complementarity in terms of services will help to maximize the reintegration and how to make it sustainable. And that's sometimes where we have challenges, because you cannot have a separate like reintegration setting compared to the same kind of issue the youth or the population in the country of origin are facing. So you really need to mainstream the reintegration within the national programs, just to ensure that you will be able to cover as much as possible for the reintegration. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's, yeah, you need to have different layers, if I can say, to ensure that you provide the best service and the more complete one.
Yeah. Do you think it makes sense, Presca?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think the referral mechanisms, as she also highlighted, it's very important in this, because due to the fact that these reintegration projects, they are just for a short term, and thereafter the returnees are left on their own. If there is these referral mechanisms where it will also be important for these local partners having these referrals, if they are being funded, will ensure that the support continues even after the project ends. But if they are not being funded, if it's just based on the duration of the project, then it will still be problematic. Because after the project, the returnees will not be able to have access to these referral mechanisms, and they will still be in a precarious situation, meaning that their reintegration would fail.
It will not be sustainable,
yes,
which is the term that keeps coming up, that is what we're aiming for, a sustainable reintegration. So within this field of reintegration, and with your gender take on it, Presca, I just wondered, what do you feel needs to be more looked into when it comes to female migrants and female returnees within reintegration? Where are the black holes?
Yeah, if I'm thinking about female migration or female returnees, I think whatever point I would mention right now, it will cut across both men and women, because the reintegration of migrants actually depends on a lot of factors beyond their gender. It's beyond their gender. So first of all, I will still mention the training for those engaging in micro businesses. And I will still mention these referral mechanisms, because it's very important. Because when a returnee is sick, what happens if she's a female, if she comes from a female-headed household, for example, Where will she turn to? She has her children to take care of. She lacks the skills. She has health issues. But if there's a referral mechanism set in place, she will know where to go to. So I think special attention should be paid to female-headed household. But at the same time, I feel that maybe that will be unfair because we also have male-headed households. Well, yeah. So in general, I think both men and women should be taken care of. If
Yeah,
I have to be honest, if I have to be honest,
of course.
because returning home, people are expecting a lot from them. They wouldn't care if you're a woman or a man. They have different expectations. And these expectations, what I notice is that is one of the main issues that these return programs do not take into considerations. We have social expectations from returnees. And mostly in the return programs, yeah, we have the psychosocial dimension, we have the economic dimension, but at the level of the origin countries, there's expectations at the community level, there's expectations at the family level, and returnees have to fulfill those expectations, otherwise they'll be shunned by their families and their communities. So those have to be taken into consideration for a sustainable reintegration.
It's a complex field for sure. Stella, if you were to fund a new project, now I'm just cutting you loose from your current work at IOM. Just what you think should be more looked into or paid more attention to. If you feel that we are lacking important bits of knowledge here.
For me, based on the different challenges we mentioned here, and usually that is reflected in the different studies, I would say that you need to first, as I was mentioning, to strengthen the pre-departure counseling. And even the training we are talking about can be offered before they return, because sometimes in the country of departure, they have more possibility for the training to be available and be done before they return. I would think about how we better improve the monitoring and evaluation process, because there is a lot of projects and a lot of actors coming in when we talk about reintegration and migration in general. But how do we capitalize on the different interventions to make it better? How do we, for example, promote the awareness in terms of cultural barrier, as we were mentioning earlier, that affects specifically the woman empowerment? And this is a more larger topic than just the reintegration one, because this is something that is real and happening in different African countries, where when you talk about women empowerment, we are still facing it in terms of religious approach, in terms of economic approach, or just in general cultural barrier. I think also when we expect a service provider to deliver services, we need to build their capacity.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have this sensitivity in terms of gender approach, how you can go with women, how you can go with men, and that's where the tailor-based approach is coming in. Another thing that we face a lot in the country of origin will be how we better decentralize the services. You will see that in most of the country, everything is centralized in one city, while the returnees, including the women, are coming from different locations with their cultural settings.
Yeah.
So how we decentralize the service. And one last point will be how we raise awareness about MHPS, so the mental health support, because that's something that is still very, very, very important in our context, and not much effort are done. So I would say that it should be whole approach that includes the different aspects, and just to make sure that we have also different actors coming in, because not only IAM or not only, I don't know, GIZ or whatsoever can be able to deliver. It should be also aligned with the national context and the national development plan. That's
there's quite a lot to look into, and I mean, we do know that there are many challenges ahead of us. I'm just thinking maybe to also end on a prosperous note. During your years within this field, kind of progress have you seen? Can you think of any examples or anything that you really feel that this is changing in the right direction?
Being from Africa, and for me, the gender perspective, we have improved a lot in terms of how we are more inclusive, and that's something we cannot deny. People are more open in terms of women empowerment, and that has been reflecting in the reintegration of women. We are able now to talk about MHPSS, which was not the case a few years ago. And also in terms of economic, even though there are still this, let's say, gender labor division, we cannot deny also that women have access more and more to more diverse economic opportunities within the different countries. So I would say that at least at that 3 level, the gender responsiveness, the MHPSS, so the mental health approach, and also the economic inclusion of women, we are getting better than where we were a few years ago.
And Presca, can you match that with any good news from your side?
I think good news from my side. I would just briefly refer to the other project I did in looking at case management processes in Ethiopia, Sudan, and Somalia. So the good news is actually there's a process to manage cases, those returning from African countries, and to be and gender specific. When women are there's actually a gender specific process, especially when women experience violence, trafficking. There's a mechanism where they follow to actually ensure that the woman is being rehabilitated. So I think that is something very positive that's happening elsewhere in Africa.
Yeah, for sure. I think we need to grasp those lights that we see in this very challenging work that you are also involved in. Thank you so much for taking part in this webcasting, letting me talk to you today. Presca Wanki, who's a researcher at United Nations University, and Stella NDIAYE, who's a program manager at IOM. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Lisa Tallroth, and all the Talk2Connect pod and webcasts are available at YouTube and also at the RRF website. The webcasts are also live streamed and includes a very interesting webinar part where you all can take part in the discussions. So please make sure to register to make sure you do not miss anything. Jon Thunqvist has done today's editing. And thank you so much for listening.
This podcast is a production from the Swedish Migration Agency, produced with the financial assistance of the European Union and contracted by ICMPD through the Talk2Connect grant. And the content is the sole responsibility of the Swedish Migration Agency and not reflecting the position of the European Union or ICMPD.